You're listening to Investify, preaching financial independence and assisting investors to achieve a more flexible and free lifestyle through smart financial planning and real estate investing. If leaving the corporate world and jumping into this thriving industry is what you desire, tune in and listen to stories of like-minded individuals who made the leap to financial independence. Equip yourself with the right tips and tricks to start your real estate journey, making active or passive ventures that are highly profitable and rewarding. Here are your hosts, Craig Kurlop and Ziana McIntyre.
What's up, everybody? You are listening to Investify. My name is Craig Kurlop, aka the Fi Guy, and I'm here with my co-host Ziana McIntyre, aka Z Money, who's shaking her head at me because I did something a little different today.
Yeah, what's going on?
I don't know. I had a word jumble. I think we're recording at a different time, so my brain is firing on different cylinders, and
I'm a little slow today. I don't know if it's Burning Man or if it's the morning or what, but I'm trying. We're here. We're chugging along.
We're chugging. Speaking of chugging, how have you been, Z?
So fantastic. So I just got back from Burning Man a couple of days ago, and re-entry is hard, but I had the best time, and I feel like I grew a lot. Yeah, into the real
into this
world.
Metaverse, in this universe.
Yeah, I feel like Burning Man is like a whole nother planet, and it's so amazing, and you don't know what you're missing, little Craggies.
I don't know what I'm missing, but I'm almost like a little bit afraid of Burning Man. I like
as you should be
videos and the pictures, and I'm like, I don't know if that place is for me. Like, I don't know.
It's hardcore, man. It's hardcore. It's not for anyone.
Is there some sort of is there a initiation process that you need to get into to get in, or like?
Sort of, kind of. I think even just getting to Burning Man is an initiation, right? It's it's far away. You have to have all this stuff because you have to survive in the desert for 10 days. You got to have all your food and your water and all these plans. And just to get a ticket is hard. So I feel like if it selects you, then you're in, but you're in for a world of pain. It's not always so easy. It's amazing.
That sounds like when I go and hike 14ers for 10 days out in the wilderness, and that sounds like my Burning Man, where it's it hurts and it's painful, but for some reason it's fun, and I don't know why I do it to myself, but I love it. And I think that's kind of the same for you.
Okay.
Anyway, speaking of pain,
I'll deal with that till next year.
And hiking. We've got an awesome guest today, Dave Meyer. If you don't know Dave, he's been a host of the BiggerPockets podcast a while back. He is a host of a BiggerPockets podcast on the market. He works for BiggerPockets. He's basically the data junkie that everyone wants to have in their pocket. And we have him in ours for the next hour. And so definitely give this a listen to the end. He'll talk about his investing journey, but also about where he thinks the market's going to be headed and what he thinks you should do about it as an investor in these changing market conditions. And I think he gives some really good advice backed by data, which again is always hard to dispute. So Z, anything you want to add before we bring him on?
No, let's bring him in.
I've known Dave for 5 or 6 years. You were probably one of the first people I've ever met in Denver, because literally everyone on my because I came to Denver for the interview at BiggerPockets, and then you were one of the people that interviewed me. So you were probably the second person I met in Denver.
Ah, that's awesome.
Look at that. But now neither of us are in Denver. You're in Amsterdam. We'll talk about that. I'm in Idaho, and we want to hear your story, Dave. So why don't you rewind it back and tell us where you first heard about financial independence?
So I guess I never really heard about the word financial independence till I was already doing it. I didn't really know that term. But I was just out of college. I moved to Denver and was waiting tables, and just met a friend who I used to ski with, who sort of randomly bought a house with his girlfriend and was absolutely crushing it. And this was in 2010. It was easy in Denver to get some good cash flow. And I was just honestly really jealous. He was living this super relaxed lifestyle where he was sort of working part-time and making all this money. And I was like, I want to do that. And so wound up finding 3 partners. I had really no money at the time. So I found 3 partners who would go in on a deal with me. We split the down payment, but I didn't even have money for the down payment. And so I borrowed that on a secondary loan from someone else, from a family member, and got that first deal. And ever since then, I've just been completely hooked.
Yeah, real estate is super addicting. How did you find these partners? And how did you have like the courage to go through with partners on your first deal?
So I was sort of lucky. The first person I partnered with was my roommate at the time. I like went skiing, heard about this guy making all this business, and I came back. I was like, dude, we have to do this. And he was someone I knew from high school. And so luckily we brought him in, and then we both knew some people back in New York where we're from who we presented the plan to. So he and I were basically sort of like the two operating people. I actually, sort of by stroke of luck, worked for a developer and a construction management company, college internships, and learned how to do financial modeling. And so I felt like pretty comfortable that I could produce a Excel document that would convince people that we would make money. I think if I looked at my underwriting of that deal right now, I would be fired by BiggerPockets, but I felt like it was good at the time. And honestly, like we just were able to, we went to basically friends and family and were able to find two other partners. I mean, the amount you needed back then was very different than what you need now for a down payment in Denver. And fortunately, we all knew each other, so we were a little bit more confident, probably than we should be. It was probably a lot of naivete.
The for real deal.
Which is the deal that makes you your first intentional deal. And so, so we're talking about this, right? We're talking about your four partners. You're talking about how you got creative with it. Obviously, Denver is a different place now than it was back in 2010, 2012. Why don't you tell us like a little bit about like what you were looking for, what the house looked like? Did you house hack it? All that good stuff.
Yeah. So I bought a fourplex. I was looking for small multifamilies, and I was lucky to find a great agent. I was actually working part-time for a commercial agent, just like to make extra money because I was waiting tables and wanted to make some more money. And she introduced me to some people who invest. And so I knew I just wanted to be in a high foot traffic area. I'm from New York. So when I first moved to Denver, I looked at the external areas and I was like, oh, this isn't a city. I don't understand what this is. And so I was looking at downtown, and I really liked Cap Hill because there's just a lot of demand in that area. It's like a young area. A lot of people want to move there. And so I was able to find in Denver, this is very common. I think at the West, it's quite common. These old, big, Victorian houses that used to be mansions and have been sort of cut up into multiple apartments. And so it was about 3,800 square feet. There was two bedroom, 1 bath apartments and two 1 bed, 1 bath apartments. It was kind of run down, to be honest. But I was able to buy 4 units for $450,000 in a really good neighborhood in Denver, which is comical at this point. But at that point, it was very scary. Yeah, it was great. We were able to raise the rent pretty quickly. Denver really started to boom around that time, so there's definitely some luck involved. But it was a really solid place, good place to cut your teeth, and learned a lot property managing that place.
Tell us about the tenants, because you said it was pretty run down. Did you inherit tenants or did you have to do a bunch of fixes?
Yeah, so we inherited tenants, and knock on wood, to this day, that was one of the only times it was the only time I've ever actually had to evict someone. For the most part, they were pretty solid. That one guy in the top floor just didn't pay and was non-communicative. And so we did have to evict, but that's the only time I've ever had to do that, fortunately. But yeah, there was some deferred maintenance for sure, mostly cosmetic. We wound up painting pretty much the entire place. I did a lot of it myself, learned that was a bad idea. There were some things that needed to be brought up to code. I tried to do that myself and failed miserably. And so I definitely felt like it was a great learning experience, learning how to allocate your time responsibly, efficiently, what I can do myself, what you should be hiring out. It was kind of good in that way, and humbling to recognize how hard it is to do a lot of this maintenance yourself and realize you should be hiring professionals.
Do you remember like what your mortgage payment was on that first deal, and like what were those initial rents? Just like quick ballpark, because I think it'll be cool to just kind of show people, the 10-year trajectory of a potential real estate investment.
I'm trying to remember the mortgage payments. I want to say like with escrow is like maybe $2,200, something like that.
That sounds right.
Yeah, I think it was like a 5% interest rate. Everyone's crazy. It's 5% again. Well, now it's 6%, but so it was higher then. And the rents, I'm going to say, were probably about $3,500 to $4,000 when we bought it, and we probably got it up above $4,000 pretty quickly. But the number in my mind that's sticking out is the two bedrooms were each renting for about $1,300 back then.
Just quick math, right? You're making about $4,000 in rent, $2,200 from your mortgage. That's $1,800 a month cash flow. Of course, you've got reserves and vacancy and all that. So maybe, you're making $1,500 to $1,000 a month in straight cash flow. And that was just like a deal on the MLS in Denver. And so that's crazy to think about, right?
It's crazy. Yeah.
But let's just say hypothetically that like you weren't like in today's scenario, right? You might have a house with a $2,200 mortgage, and you might get like $2,300 or $2,400 in rent. So like the cash flow is not great, right? Mm-hmm. But where is do you still own the house?
No, I actually sold it in 2018.
Oh, I'm sure you're kicking yourself. But anyway, in
2018... Well, I reinvested in Denver, so it was fine.
So you're good. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
But let's say, so in 2018, when you sold, what were the rents then?
Oh, God. At least $6,000 a month, at least. Maybe more.
$6,000, right?
Yeah, total. Yeah.
Total.
It went up 50-60% over 8 years.
Yeah. So
that was before rent went up like crazy over the last few years. Like that was probably just normal rent growth.
Right. You're probably getting like 7,000 or 8,000 now. But let's just say like, a 6-7 year period, your rents go up $2,000. Your mortgage payment is staying basically the same. Right. You're still getting all that appreciation. And that's the great thing about holding real estate for the long term is that sure, the numbers may just barely work when you buy it, but in like 8 to 10 years, which everyone hopefully is holding for the long term, your cash flow ends up exploding. Z?
So one thing about holding long-term, especially with older buildings, is that they can require a lot of maintenance. So was that one of the reasons why you were like, ooh, let's get rid of this and then maybe buy something a little bit easier?
That's exactly right. Yeah. And, having partners, people just sort of have different desires at that point. So it had been truly a grand slam. And we decided to go our separate ways basically after years of partnership. It went well, but yeah, there was a lot of deferred maintenance. And I actually wound up we wanted to sell it, but we had some concessions. We had to put a whole new roof on during the sale. We painted the whole place, but there was more work. And I honestly think if someone had the energy and will, they could have renovated the interior and got the rents up to Craig's point, like 8,000, 9,000. My life was changing and didn't have the energy and the partnership buy-in to do it. And so sold it and then 1031'd into other places in Denver that were just still had some value add, but were in a little bit easier position to do that.
In 2018, did you just all four of you sell it together, or did anyone ever want out before anybody else? Or was there any sort of like implications that kind of happened through that 6-7 year period?
Yeah. So 2 of us bought the other 2 out in like 2016. So it was sort of like this progression, but it was very amicable. And I think it's because we all knew each other. And the other reason is just we made an operating agreement like in 2010 that had rights of first refusal, what we would do if someone wanted to lease. And it's something I always recommend to people with partnerships is like, it sounds stupid, especially people always think like, oh, it's not necessarily I know people. I think it's the opposite. You know someone, even more reason to do it. Like you don't want to mess with your relationship. Like when we were ready to sell and two people wanted to exit, I was like, all right, we got a plan. Here's what we do. You get an appraisal, we get appraisal. We're going to average the 2 of them together. We're going to get the option to buy you out. If we refuse, we'll sell. We decided to buy them out. It worked out pretty well for everyone. Everyone was very happy. I know that doesn't happen all the time, but I think really like just with anything, if you're really clear about what you're going to do and the operating procedures, it really helps a lot.
And just for people to understand a buyout, did you guys have to refinance? Like where did you get the capital to be able to give them that money?
Yeah, so we were able to refinance and just buy them out without any additional capital injection. So we had, for 6 years or whatever, built up a lot of equity in the home and did a refi. The two people who sold got a lot of liquidity. We did refi, which sort of brought down our cash flow for a while, but gave the two of us a better equity position. And honestly, everyone got what they wanted, which was great.
That's great. So it's now in 2018. What did you end up selling that for?
$1.15 million.
Wow.
My
Gosh.
Yeah.
It's talk about a grand slam. So you went from 450,000 to 1.15 million. I almost can't even do that math. It's too big.
It was like
what is that, 700,000?
The way it worked out for the equity position was like a 6x.
Wow. 6x return on investment. And that's just amazing. Obviously, you're right, unprecedented times in the real estate space. You kind of bought at the perfect time.
It's a lot of luck, honestly.
Right. Yeah. A lot of luck, but also you need to put yourself in a position to be lucky, right? And in order to do that, you have to at least buy something at some point. And so no one knows what the next 10 years is going to look like. But I would bet, even though we may be seeing it down in the next 12 to 24 months, we'll let you talk about that a little bit later. Over the course of 6 to 8 to 10 years, you can almost guarantee that it will go up. All right. So you mentioned that 2018 you sell and then you 1031 into another property. What else are you 1031ing into?
Okay. So we did a 1031. I actually reinvested into 2 places. One was in Denver, as a single family, actually near the BiggerPockets office. I just really like that area a lot. There's a lot of development money going in there from the city. And then I bought my first short-term rental that was in Winter Park or near Winter Park in Tabernash, Colorado, mostly for selfish reasons because I wanted to use it.
Nice.
No, that's great. And so you're able to sell a $1.1 million property, and in order to 1031, you need to go into something bigger. I suspect none of those individually were bigger, but collectively they were. And so that's why you were able to do that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. So I think... yeah, as long as you take on, the purchase price is more and you take on the same amount of debt, I think those two combined were probably around 1.3 million. For total acquisition cost.
Sweet. So let's talk about the Denver place first. This is the place. It's near the BiggerPockets office. Why else did you like that place? Why else did you end up going through with it?
Yeah. So it's funny. So I had this whole deal lined up for 1031 and then there was like a title issue like at the last minute. So I needed to identify a property and I'm sure you two are like this, but I just go look at houses for fun because I'm weird. And I was like, I know one that's on the market. And so I just ran back over there. It's just in the neighborhood and it was 3 blocks from the house I lived in, which I really liked because I was still self-managing everything at that point. And so it was just very convenient. And I just knew this neighborhood like the back of my hand, which I think is super important. I had bought my personal residence because I knew there was a park coming in. They were building this nice park and a bike path and all this stuff. And the city was putting in a lot of infrastructure and it was in the same area. And so it was easy to manage. I thought it would cash flow. It did. I did buy it from a flipper, which was kind of weird. So it was turnkey. And I think there's some downsides to that for sure. Learned my lesson there. But overall, it worked out really well.
Yeah. Why is it bad to buy from a flipper? Yeah.
I just think they take a lot of shortcuts sometimes. This actually was okay. It was okay. But I think there's always some skeletons in the closet. That's not every flipper. This is a flipper I don't know. So I think if you knew someone who was a good flipper or a good builder, good contractor, that kind of thing. But there was just random stuff missing that it was fine. It was nothing significant, but I definitely learned to do a little bit more due diligence and not just take for granted the fact that everything looks new. And so it's, it functions properly.
When you are looking at a flip, a turnkey house, is there anything that you can, when you're looking through the house before you buy it, is there anything you can basically go to think hey, maybe this isn't done with the best quality? Do you have any kind of secrets up your sleeve with that?
I don't even know. I'll just give you examples of stuff that I found. I pulled out the dishwasher once and there was no subfloor beneath it. They just didn't bother to put any subflooring in, or there was just no garage door opener, or a garage door I don't know what it's called, like the machine,
Like
the engine.
yeah, the
Like
motor.
it was just
yeah.
not there. Yeah, it was like open when I went to, like they were like showing the house. It was like open. I was like, oh, of course it's there. And like that wasn't caught in an inspection. So it's just like little things like that. I didn't honestly like use a punch list. I was just sort of like, you know, coming off this deal falling through, desperate to find something. And I was like, this is great. It's just the perfect house. And sort of cut some corners I shouldn't have.
Okay, good to know. Good to
The
know.
trouble of falling in love.
Yeah,
That happens to
Exactly.
me a lot. You're just like, oh, this is perfect. I know it. And then, yeah, blinds you.
Dave, we
Yeah,
should come out
there's
with
a
a movie
reason
called
there's like a checklist that you should
Yeah.
go through.
the House Next Door. That'll be the sequel.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, you had asked about house hacking earlier. I didn't wind up house hacking that Priest one, but I did a different threeplex in Denver for a while. And man, I'm sure you could tell a lot of stories, both of you. But those are the house next door. The house you live in is really the movie you want to make.
That is the movie you want to. Yes, 100%. And so with this house that you ended up buying, obviously, you know, it was a flip. It wasn't perfect, but it was good enough. What did you end up like renting that one for, and all that good stuff?
Yeah, it was like about $3,000 a month, and bought it for like $550. So it was cash flowing probably like a 5.5 or 6% return, cash on cash, which is not normally, it's not great, but honestly in Denver at that time, that was pretty good. And given the tax savings and the situation I was under the gun, I was pretty thrilled with that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then,
But for the record, it didn't keep up, and I actually sold that earlier this year.
Oh, okay. Let's talk about that then. And so so you bought this house. You rented just traditional rental, or was it Airbnb, or just straight up
Traditional.
old school? Okay, old school renting.
Yeah.
So why did you sell it? Just was the rents were keeping up, or a lot of maintenance?
Yeah, just the return on equity, like the property had appreciated so much that we had a lot of equity in it, and the price, you know, the rent wasn't keeping pace. It was a cool house. The neighbors were a problem. We kept losing good tenants because the neighbors were just causing issues. It was just a headache. I live in Europe. I didn't want to deal with it, and I wound up selling it and at a good time, and just put it into a passive investment instead.
What was the passive investment? Just like a syndication?
Yeah, I did a DST. Have you ever done or heard of a DST?
Sounds like a drug.
It's not. It's called a Delaware Statutory Trust. But it's basically this legal structure that allows you to put 1031 money into a syndication, because otherwise it's kind of hard. You need to either do a tenant in common or a Delaware Statutory Trust. So I did that. It's kind of cool. I mean, we'll see how it goes, but so far so good.
Nice, cool. And so let's not forget about your luxury house up in Tabernash, your short-term rental. That's
my love.
That's what Z's perking up about over there. Yeah. So yeah, tell us a little bit about that one. Like, what'd you end up buying that one for? Mortgage payment? How's it going on the short-term rental stuff?
I was long on Grand County for a long time. I just think it's a great, wonderful place, and prices there are just so much cheaper than they were in the other ski towns in Colorado. They're not anymore, but they were a couple of years ago. And I did a lot of analysis and just found that houses that had 4 or 5 bedrooms were outperforming the market, and they weren't that much more expensive. And so I went and looked. Luckily, in a small area like that, you can literally go look at every house on the market. And I did, and found one that was 3 bedrooms, but had like truly maybe 1,500 square feet of excess living space in the basement. And so I converted those into 2 additional bedrooms. I bought it for $740 and have been renting it out with a professional rental property company for coming up on 4 years now. And it's been doing great. It's not like a tremendous cash on cash return, probably because I do a professional property management company. I think if I did it myself or just like built the systems, I'd probably do better. But I'm still thinking I probably do like over 10% easily. I think we'll do this year. So it's still doing really well by my standards. When I go back to Colorado, I still get to use it. So I really like it. And it's been a great investment, and the appreciation, I mean, just like everywhere, has gone crazy, but ski towns in particular have done really well over the last few years. We'll see if that holds up over the next few months, but it's worked out great.
Awesome. Love that, man. So it all kind of stems from that one, right? That one great decision that you made back in 2010 to like partner with everybody, buy the house. And it's funny how it kind of goes from that to now you've got a ski house that's making a whole bunch. You've got your primary residence, you've got another property, and you've probably got a few more as well. And so I guess we don't have time to go into your whole portfolio, but why don't you give us like a grand, like kind of like an overview of what your portfolio looks like today? And then I want to talk a little bit about too, like where you think the market's going to be headed and all that good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So just to your comment about that, yeah, like when I first did that first deal, I had no equity. I was paying off a secondary loan using the money I was making by being the property manager. So, it just shows like, obviously I got some headwinds from the, tailwinds from the economy and everything, but you never know where it's going to go. So I do still own a few single families and one small multifamily in Denver. But since moving to Europe a couple years ago, I pretty much exclusively, I haven't done any individual deals since I moved here. I just invest in syndications now. And so mostly passive, large multifamily value adds. And I like that because it sort of suits me. I'm like, part of my job at BiggerPockets is like exploring different markets and learning about different markets and asset classes. And I like syndications because it allows you to invest in those types of things without having to build a team, which is not that hard, to be honest. But, just at the stage I'm in my career and my lifestyle, that's sort of what I invest in most now.
Yeah. So it sounds like where you want to focus on is like your job at BiggerPockets. So you don't want to focus on being an investor.
Yeah, I mean, I'm weird. I'm the like one. I like my job at BiggerPockets, so I'm gonna stay with it. But I do invest, and like I like doing it. I've done 3 this year, and probably will do 1 or 2 more by the end of the year, syndications. So I'm trying to be active, but like logistically, living in Europe, it's like really hard to think about managing properties again, or like I just don't have the time to get the deal flow that I would need to even deploy the amount of capital I want to, so it's just easier right now. But if we move back, I probably would start again buying individual properties.
I feel like you have all this information in your head with all these different markets and everything. It's like going to waste, Dave. I'm like, we need to have regular calls. I need to figure that out. Yeah.
You need to become a regular at the Data Deli, Z.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Yes, exactly. I'm trying to share the information. But I'm happy to share what I know if you have questions.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, let's get your crystal ball out, because I imagine people ask you all the time how to predict the future. And, none of us really can. We have some ideas. But what do you think of this market and people still investing in real estate? Yeah.
So people do ask me all the time. And to your point, the only honest answer is no one knows. But my guess is, it's an informed guess, I guess, is that the market is likely going to see a single digit, in my mind, decline in property values on a national scale. It could be more like a flat market. I think these idea that people are saying that it's going to be revert to pre-pandemic levels are nonsense in my mind. I think there's like a very, very small chance of that happening. But you are starting to see certain large markets, Seattle, San Jose, have seen, almost 5-7% month over month declines from June to July. So I do think that trend is likely to continue for a little while, and will probably bottom out sometime. Maybe not bottom out, but it will accelerate into winter. That said, I think we're reaching this point where the market is really going to split, and certain markets are going to perform well. And certain markets are going to decline further. And it's just really comes down to knowing your local market really, really well. To your question about investing, I'm more interested in investing now than I was 6 months ago, to be perfectly honest, because I think most people who are experienced understand that there's less competition now, that sellers are more motivated, and you have more leverage. It's just a different environment. And I get that it's scary as a first-time investor. And unlike 2 years ago, you could literally buy anything and you would make a killing. That is no longer the case. You have to be a lot more selective. You have to stick to your fundamentals. But I do think, I genuinely believe there are more opportunities now than there were 6 months ago if you're buying for the long term. I wouldn't be flipping houses right now, but I've never flipped a house, so I'm biased.
Yeah, just to kind of echo your point there, Dave, our team, the FI team, we're constantly helping house hackers and really long-term investors, and mostly on the buy side. And we have never had this much leverage in our entire history. It's like, oh, we can go in a little below asking, ask for concessions, don't need to waive inspections or appraisals. It is like, oh my God, we have power. It's good. Sure, interest rates are higher, but you can have the power now, make a good purchase now, and in 2 years when the interest rates drop again, you can refinance it. And you want to do that. You want to make sure you buy the property before interest rates go back down, because when interest rates go down, housing prices are just going to go back up. At least that's my take on it. So Dave, maybe you can call my bullshit or not.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I don't think there is never a time where there's going to be perfect alignment on every factor in the housing market. So people are like, oh, I want to see the market crash so then I could buy something cheap.
At the new bottom.
Right, exactly. Yeah, we all want to do that.
What does that look like?
And we also want that to be at a time when there's low interest rates and employment's really high. So I have a great debt to income ratio. Those things don't exist. There's always going to be some adverse conditions. And right now it's definitely interest rates. And so that's something to think about. But I do think my guess is that interest rates will fall probably at some point again in the future. We don't know, but that does seem to be trending in that direction. I don't think we're ever, it's unlikely we'll see 3 or 4% again, 3-ish percent. But I do think below 5 is probably somewhere it will settle in the next few years. So that is just my personal belief. I obviously don't have a crystal ball, but I don't think that's an unreasonable prediction. One thing I was just going to say is if people are looking for market, I think the best thing to look at, and I'm sure as realtors, you know this, but if you want to understand where your market's heading, it's not that hard. You just look at days on market and inventory, and it's a pretty good indicator of where the market is heading. If inventory and days on market are spiking in your area, you're probably going to see price declines, especially if they're approaching or exceeding pre-pandemic levels. If, Boston is a good example. Inventory hasn't gone up there at all. It looks the same as it did 6 months ago. So is that market going to see price declines? Probably not, because it shows that there's still kind of a seller's market. So it's just, of course, it's not a crystal ball. You can't predict everything that way, but it is a pretty good lead indicator of where things are heading in your market.
Are you seeing anything about bigger cities versus smaller towns versus where is a good place to invest?
I think one of the most fascinating dynamics in the housing market is the work from home phenomenon and how it's changing where people want to live. And we just don't know what's going to happen. The days the average American works from home has sort of flatlined at 30%. But now you see all these people, this market changes their conditioning, they started calling people back to the office. And so over the last few years, we've seen the suburbs really outperform, and urban areas outperform urban core, which is pretty unusual for the housing market, especially since the Great Recession. Urban core is absolutely recovered way faster. I think that dynamic is something to watch. My guess is work from home is not really going away. I think it will probably come off its peak, but we're not going back to pre-pandemic levels. And so I do think there's probably still some suburban areas that are going to do pretty well. And then generally speaking, anything that's low affordability is going to underperform. You see these markets like San Jose, Reno, Las Vegas, Austin, they're just ridiculously unaffordable. They are going to come down in my mind. Whereas you see other markets I'll just name a few, like Philadelphia or Hartford, Connecticut or whatever. They are much more affordable, and they're probably going to I don't know if they're going to keep going up, but they'll probably be flatter than the other markets.
No, that's great. That's great feedback. Yeah. And that's great. Like, that's kind of exactly how I'm thinking of it too. And I also think that as people have gotten a taste of working from home, right, whether they're back in the office now or not, and I think most people probably prefer at least that option. So whether they're not working home from now, they may at this point still be trying to figure out a way where they can work from home. Maybe they're starting their little side hustle, or maybe they're trying to find a new job or whatever it is. And so I don't know what we'll see, right? But I do really think there's something to, not living in that urban core of the city, because parking is a pain in the butt, or it's really expensive, or all that stuff. So my thoughts are all qualitative, whereas Dave's is all quantitative. So believe in what you want to believe.
I think it's true. No, I totally agree. I mean, I like working from home. Look, I'm sitting in my kitchen right now. It's great.
You're an answer. Yeah, you're an answer.
I mean,
are you on a river?
Yeah, we got a canal right outside. It's great.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, I think we're going to be heading into about the final part of our show. Is there any other words of wisdom or anything that you want to give to our listeners before we head there?
No, I guess the last thing I'll say is people just always want to ask me what's going to happen, and I don't really know. I just think strongly that there is opportunity in the next couple of months. And as long as you know how to analyze deals and underwrite property, you should not be super afraid. The housing market works in cycles. When I bought in 2010, that was before the bottom. The market bottomed in 2011. You think I'm worried about that? It's about long-term strategy, and deal underwriting is really the key.
Well, the thing I was going to ask you before is that back then, when the market was bottomed out, it was really hard to get a loan. So did you guys struggle with that in 2010?
No, actually, it was actually fine. I think probably because we had 4 people on the loan. I don't even think I was on it because I was a waiter. But no, but I think that's true. And sort of back what we were talking about earlier, where we were saying people want it to be the bottom of the market and great lending conditions, which doesn't usually happen. So there are always trade-offs.
Love that. Awesome. Well, let's head into
the final 4.
What are you reading right now?
I'm actually reading a BiggerPockets book right now. I am reading
the house hacking strategy.
Is it mine?
Is it the house hacking strategy? Yeah.
No, I'm reading The Hands-Off Investor by Brian Burke. It's very good. Highly recommend if you're interested in passive investing.
Are you investing in Open Door or any of those other what syndications are you investing in?
Not Open Door, but a couple other BiggerPockets affiliated folks.
I see. Cool.
I have nothing against Open Door. I honestly don't even know that much about it. I tried once and they oversubscribed in 5 minutes, and I was like, I don't know.
Whatever. Yeah. Cool. Second question: what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
One of my bosses, when in an internship, before I was even interested in real estate, just told me to acquire as many assets as I could as early as I could in life. And I think that's pretty sage advice for people listening to this podcast.
I think that might be the best advice I've ever heard. So yeah, that sounds great. Yeah.
I know. Craig, I want to infiltrate, let's go around to all the colleges and just have a chat with them on how to get into house hacking. Cause I just think that would be such a good idea.
It literally would change everyone's life.
Honestly, it's just my boss at a construction management company took me out to lunch on my last day and said that. I was like, all right, I'll try. I had no idea I was going to do it, but it was good advice.
What does that even mean?
Yeah. As you sip your Bud Light.
Exactly.
Ew. All right. Question number 3. What is your why?
More time to spend with my friends and family and to travel. Honestly, living abroad was a dream of mine in life for most of my life. And my partner Jane and I actually in 2016 sort of decided we really wanted to do that, and it was very motivating. And so now we've done that. So I'm happy to say that we've ticked one of those major motivations off the box now that we live in Amsterdam.
Are you guys taking part in the American-Dutch Friendship Treaty? Is that why you're there? Did you know about that?
We're not. I do know about that. I think the name is hilarious.
That's really cute.
Yeah, exactly. It's very quaint. No, so my partner Jane worked for a company that was bought by Booking.com, which is a Dutch company. And so they transferred her over here a few years ago, and luckily they let me come too.
Cool.
Yeah, I just snuck in.
All right, Dave, last question. Craft us your favorite sandwich. Custom made.
Oh my God.
Custom made.
Okay. This is a great question. I'm excited about it. So I'm all over the place on this, but like my go-to is like, you got to start with ciabatta. I think ciabatta is the finest of all sandwich breads. It's just a great vessel for any sort of filling. Then I would go with Italian. And I feel like, Craig, you must appreciate this being from Boston. Like, you can't get good Italian sandwiches outside of the East Coast, but if you like ham, capicola, a little salami, then you got to go roasted red pepper, arugula, and then like a jardiniere or an olive spread, and you're done. That's it.
No cheese?
I'm lactose intolerant, so no cheese for me. But if you're out there, put some provolone on there.
There you go. Taken from a true New Yorker. Yeah.
Oh man. I love how he really went into that question.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna just tell you like PB&J. I'm gonna describe it in intimate detail.
No, that's why I needed to hear that. I was actually like taking notes, and that's for lunch today. Awesome, Dave. All right, Dave. Where can people find out more about you? Tell us about the Data Deli and all that good stuff.
Yeah, sure. So I'm on Instagram at the Data Deli. I also host a podcast called On the Market. And it's a BiggerPockets podcast. We talk about sort of the stuff we were talking about sort of at the end here, trends, news, data about the real estate market. And I recently wrote a book. I don't know when this is coming out, but it's from BiggerPockets. I wrote it with Jay Scott, who's an incredible investor. And it's called Real Estate by the Numbers. And it's really all about deal analysis and understanding the numbers and math behind being a great real estate investor.
Dude.
Look at us, all three BiggerPockets authors.
I know.
Oh yeah, this is so
we're
fun.
basically a panel.
Yeah. This could be a panel at BiggerPockets conference. Just the three of us.
Hint.
Talking.
Yeah. Dude, I actually did not know that one, there was a On the Market podcast, and two, that there was you're also coming out with a book.
Really?
So I didn't even know that. So I'm gonna check that out.
Check it out. Yeah, the podcast is great. It's a panel show. It's our first panel show. So it's like me and like 4 other people, and I sort of moderate it. And a bunch of really experienced people on there. So it's just super cool. And the book hasn't really even been announced. It's like sort of in pre-launch so far. So hopefully it'll be as successful as your books. I'm very nervous.
Well, we'll see. Mine's also in pre-launch. So
yeah.
We're here together.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just hope for a good book buying season.
Yeah, totally.
For the holidays. Awesome, Dave. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. I know it's getting kind of late where you are, maybe. I forget. I don't know.
It's 6.
But either 6. Yeah, getting kind of late. It's dinner time for you. So, go enjoy your boat rides through the canals and your crazy sandwiches on ciabatta bread.
Bike ride.
And bike rides. We will see you at BPCon in like a few weeks. So I'm looking forward to that, man.
See you in a couple of weeks. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, see you, man. And that was Dave Meyer. Z, what did you think of Dave?
I love Dave's investor trajectory. It's like he started with whatever he could afford, which turned out to be a great investment. Then he turned it into something that was the typical single family home, which a lot of people do. And then the next thing was a vacation rental, because people are like, oh, well, now I want to do, really good cash on cash return. So it's really interesting to see how he kind of flowed through everything. And I love that now he's doing syndications, and it's really just kind of that hands-off investor experience, which is the name of that book he's reading, Hands-Off Investor. But yeah, I think it's important for people to see that even though it's great to hold real estate over time, it doesn't mean that the first place you're going to buy is going to be your best place and that you're going to necessarily keep that one for 30 years. So there's lots of options. It's just get your foot in the door with whatever you can start with. My first place was a 1-bedroom apartment. His first place was older. So it just kind of depends where you can go. But from there, future is bright.
Yeah, and I think one thing that he really illustrated is that your life and things change over time, and you can adhere your real estate investing strategy to your life, right? It shouldn't be the other way around, right? You shouldn't adhere your life to your real estate. You should adhere your real estate to your life. And so, like, what do you want? Clearly, Dave is really excited about having a few properties in Denver that are pretty hands off. He really likes his W-2 job at BiggerPockets, where he probably makes decent money, if I had to guess. And now he's like, well, I don't want any more work, so I'm going to put it into syndications and be totally just hands-free. And so could he get a better return if he went to go find these deals himself and put it all together? Does he have the network to do it? Dave has all the resources to do a big multifamily himself, I promise you. But he's like, nah, I don't want to do that. Like, I want to enjoy my time with his partner, Jane, and in Amsterdam. And so that's what he does. And so I think as you're progressing through your real estate journey, you need to figure out what you want out of life and make your real estate adhere to that.
I love it. Yep. That's great. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think so many people feel like you have to have 100 doors and you have to be bigger and bigger every year to be, a valued investor. But honestly, we're doing this for the financial freedom, and that's his version of freedom. So I think it's great.
Yeah. Don't compare yourself to other people with lots of doors. Just, again, if you want to be that person because you genuinely want to be that person, go for it. But if you just want $10,000 a month of passive income, then you probably don't need to do that. So anyway, one thing, you know what I really want, Z? Like, what's one thing I really want in life? I really want ratings and reviews for Investify on Apple iTunes.
You even tricked me. I was like, oh my gosh, what does Craig want? I want to know. Inquiring minds want to know.
Why is that a trick?
I don't know. I leaned in. I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Yes. If you guys, you hear us say this every week. So if you haven't done it yet, what's wrong with you? Come on, get out there, write a review. I actually tried to leave someone a review on Apple iTunes yesterday, and it was actually difficult. So if you're having trouble with that, go to Spotify, go to, anything else and leave us a review there. And we appreciate it. So
or just give us a follow on Instagram. I'm the Fi Guy, and Ziana is
Ziana McIntyre.
Ziana McIntyre, and there,
and we'll love you forever.
You can just let us know. Yeah, we'll just always love you. So, thanks again for tuning in this week, and we will see you all next week.
That's it for this episode of Investify. We hope that these nuggets of real estate wisdom lead to more savvy financial planning and a clearer path towards financial freedom. For more content like this, subscribe to the show at investify.com. Don't forget to leave a rating and share it with your friends. Together, we can transform more real estate newbies into successful and clever investors. Thank you so much for listening. See you on the next one.